Come with me, I'm headed down the right path. I feel so brave, my head held high and I'm showing class. Dreams ignited, every day I truly give my best. I'm thriving excitedly to be the very best version of myself. I'm so bold and I'm so brilliant. I feel amazing, I feel so resilient. I'm so bold and I'm so brilliant. I feel so amazing, I feel so resilient.
To another inspiring episode of the Chundria Brownlow Show. I'm your host, Dr. Chundria Brownlow, and today we're tackling a powerful and necessary topic, wellness and financial peace. My guests are two powerhouse professionals who are helping people take back control of their lives in two essential areas, mind and money. First up, we'll hear from Erin Clifford, a lawyer, licensed mental health expert, wellness coach, and best-selling author of Wellness Reimagined. She'll share practical ways we can reclaim our well-being and redefine success on our own terms. Then we're diving into credit health and financial confidence with Rod Griffin, Senior Director of Consumer Education at Experian. He's dropping gems on everyday money moves that protect your credit and peace of mind. So whether you're trying to reduce stress, bounce back financially, or simply want to feel more in control, this episode is for you. Let's jump in. First up, we'll hear from Erin Clifford, a lawyer, licensed mental health expert, wellness coach, and best-selling author of Wellness Reimagined. She'll share practical ways we can reclaim our well-being and redefine success on our own terms. Erin Clifford, welcome to the Chundria Show. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. Now let's dive on in today. Now you've made a bold career pivot
Yes.
from attorney to wellness expert, and you're still an attorney today, right?
I am. I'm still an attorney today, but I don't traditionally practice. I like to help lawyers get healthy.
I love that. So what inspired you to make that shift, and really how has it shaped your personal definition of success?
For sure. One of the things I think is when I first graduated actually from college, I actually taught high school in the Chicago public schools. I was an English teacher, and I noticed a lot that all of my students and their families were really struggling with their, wellness, their mental health. And then when I joined the legal profession, I saw the exact same thing. And it really just inspired me to really want to help people, find a way to, be successful in their careers and all their, professional endeavors, but then also have, all of that success in your personal life, in your health and wellness too. Because I really think of wellness, kind of broadly. It's, it's not just the physical health, it's your mental, your emotional, your spiritual. And so it really just inspires me personally to think about my different life domains when I'm thinking about success and the kind of life I want to live. And, that career is only like one part of it. We want to make sure that we're tapping into these other things too, because I think that's really what brings us the most harmony and the most fulfillment.
Say it again for the people in the back, Erin. We can be so laser focused on our careers and the money and the finances and the goals, but you're right. We do not collectively as a human race spend enough time living in the present and honoring ourselves in that way. I was looking at your book description, and you say you help people take a break from the chaos of daily life to redefine what wellness truly means to them. And I thought that was so special because our wellness journey is so personal to us. So let's talk about Wellness Reimagined. It sounds like you've laid out a holistic roadmap for better living. For someone that's just getting started on their wellness journey, for whatever that looks like, where should they begin?
So I really think the place to begin is really like taking a deep dive and thinking about what are your values? What are your priorities at this point in your life? Because when I was writing this book, I really said, as a kid, I used to love those choose your own adventures. So I really kind of think of this as choose your own wellness adventure. What do you want your life to look like? And so a good place to start is, what are your values? What are your priorities? Because these should really guide you as you're thinking of, the wellness initiatives you want to bring in, but also, what does that wellness mean in your career, in your personal life, with your family, your community? And I really think about it as, whose dream am I really living? I often get asked by young people, and I think this is so powerful, how do I know these are my values and not the values of people I see online? And so I really wanted, when I was writing this, to help people, of all ages, think about, what do they want their wellness to look like in their own lives? Because, there's no one prescriptive program. It's going to look different for all of us.
It sounds like this can be a really eye-opening experience to someone that gets the opportunity to work with you, or that gets the opportunity to read your book, to reinvent themselves. And we always think about reinvention as a pathway to success. But I don't think there's enough mention of reinvention for wellness, reinvention for your health, reinvention for your mindset, reinvention for burnout. Like, we don't spend enough time collectively talking about reinvention. You get with people you haven't seen in a long time, and then you do the catch up and like, how have you been? How's the family? How's your job? But like, how are you? How are you doing? How do you feel? How's that job really treating you? And so that's what I appreciate about not only your mantra, not only your passion for wellness and your passion for helping people become better versions of themselves, but I appreciate that you took time out of because you could go on and you could be an attorney and you could work your job and you could go home and eat your dinner, but you chose to pivot in this way, to give back to the world, and there's so many more people out there that have the need than there are, people that are giving. So I just salute you, for caring about the well-being of others.
Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, I really mean this. Like, there's nothing that brings me like more personal like joy than being able to help people, even if it's just little things, just to make their lives a little bit better. I feel very blessed in my life. I've struggled too with some like mental health challenges and things like that. So to be able to be in like a healthy, happy space, if that message I can spread to others just is, means the world to me.
Sure. Now, I imagine being an attorney. I'm not an attorney, so I can imagine being an attorney or any job that's high-powered, fast-paced. You're juggling 1,000 things. All the deadlines feel important. All the priorities are important. And then not only that, you're managing your career life, your personal life, your responsibility, etc. And then, you have people that may be on the edge of burnout, may have seen burnout, may have experienced burnout. What's the first thing you tell someone who feels like they're running on empty?
You know what I tell people? Like, first of all, take a deep breath. And, one of the things that I've always, kind of lean towards is sort of that idea of like the oxygen mask rule. So, when you get on an airplane, right, the flight attendant tells you, put your oxygen mask on first before you assist others. And I just think that is so important in our lives. And sometimes that gets lost in the grind of, I work with a lot of people, they're, busy professionals, and then they also have families, they're driving their kids all over the place. And sometimes we just get lost in all of that. And so really to like take a step back and think about simple ways, right, you can give yourself that oxygen. When it comes to self-care, maybe the initial step isn't to have some huge wellness program, but can you give yourself like 10 minutes a day? Can you build in little pockets of self-care into your day, into your life? And sometimes that might even just be using your boundaries better. And so really it's about like, being aware of what's going on and starting small. And, when it comes to burnout, I think one of the best indicators is, and, I've certainly felt this in my life, when you stop enjoying things you love to do. And if you kind of are at the point where you're feeling like that, maybe you've got a dinner with all your girlfriends one night and you're like, what, I don't even want to go. I'm so tired. That's to me a sign of burnout, and really kind of thinking about, okay, what can I do to give myself that oxygen?
Sure. You raise a great point about being intentional about carving out that time, because everything else can feel so important, and then you're putting yourself last, you're putting your needs last. Even a 10-minute walk, even do not disturb on your phone, even blocking out a portion of the day where that's yours. Like, I have that 2 o'clock, that 2 to 2:15 is mine, and nobody's going to touch it. Nobody's going to schedule me for anything. And so what I love about your approach is how you really are blending the physical, emotional, and mental wellness components together in one single person. Why is it important to you to treat wellness as more of a full picture experience and not just like, because you could have done like a fitness thing or a diet plan or specifically on mental health, but you're really talking about well-rounded wellness here, right?
Yeah, because I just think, we can't, like cut ourselves into parts, right? Think about, if anyone's ever had like a knee injury or a foot injury, right? It impacts like everything that's going on in your body too. And so I think when we don't think about, that big picture, we're kind of missing out on things. And we might even be going down a wellness path that, doesn't actually work for us. I mean, I think about, really strict exercise plan. Maybe you don't have time for that. I see this come up a lot with nutrition. I've one of my backgrounds with a lot of certifications is in nutrition, and I love working with that with my clients. But depending on what kind of lifestyle you have, what you like, what your family's like, it might make a difference on the way you want to go about your nutrition in life. A perfect example, there was a couple years ago, all the intermittent fasting, right? Or that time restricted eating came out. And, I would have parents that are like, I'm trying to do this, but now I can't have dinner with my kids. And it's like, well, then you're missing out on all that emotional, mental goodness that you get when you spend time with your family and your community. And so I just think it's important to think about there's so many different ways to eat healthy, to exercise healthy, to live healthy. And so what works for you and what's actually going to work for the world that you want to live in your life?
Very true. And I think you're the prime example. I mean, it feels like you single-handedly designed your parachute and then you pivoted from one career to the next, and you made it personal for you. And then not only did you make it personal for you, you put yourself in a position to serve and help others, which I love. I just love that. Even meeting you today, I just love that you did that. And so for some people, it's not as easy to pivot. Sometimes there's fear.
Yeah.
There's that doubt. There's that self-sabotage. In your personal experience, was little Erin always this fearless and courageous and willing to take chances in life, love, and career, or was this something that you adopted?
I think it really took time to sort of like build, my confidence where I was really ready to do it. But I definitely think growing up, it kind of laid the foundation. Like I, had two amazing women role models, like my grandma, Betty, who I actually dedicated my book to. She was like way ahead of her time. Like she was a career woman when before like a lot of people were, but she also loved her family and cared about her health and what she looked like and all these, different aspects. And so I really kind of watched her have this harmony. And I was always just so like drawn to like my mom, she like kind of pivoted as my sister and I got older and kind of were in high school, going to college, and then she started her own business. And I always just thought, how cool is that? And they just always made me realize like you can pivot at different points in your life. And so it really did give me that confidence. But I also think, when I'm trying to help people do that, and even for myself, I really just kind of slowly laid a plan out. I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed because we're like, I'm not ready to do this. Like, I'm really afraid. I think when we like kind of talk about it, and slowly kind of figure out what we want. Like I'm working with a client right now that kind of wants to career pivot. When we're taking some time to figure out what does that look like, right? As opposed to just quitting your job and then all of a sudden you've got your bills and all those things you're worried about. But I do think we can make these life shifts if we really want to, when we plan for them and we've got a great group of people around us, that community that can really encourage us when we're having one of those doubts, or feeling like an imposter syndrome kind of thing. We can be like, no, like you've got this.
Just a bit ago, you alluded to scheduling time for yourself, for self-care, scheduling time for joy, and then also taking a look at the things that you used to enjoy that maybe you're you're like overwhelmed by, like, oh God, I really don't feel like doing that because I'm tired, I don't feel like it. But then you also just mentioned a great point now about building and fostering community and to keep you going, and that support system. So it sounds like you had your family, you've had your family to be your big support system, and you're pulling that experience into being a support system for others, right? And so you're not just impacting individuals, you're also, I read that you served on the ABA Mental Health Task Force. That's a part of Chicago Public Schools here. And then you led community initiatives across the city. How has your work in the community influenced your own philosophy on wellness and success?
You know, the more I go in and like work with groups of people, it makes me realize that, wellness is different for everybody. And that the one thing that I think we all really need to have is, we need to have kind of what's our core plan for ourselves. We've got to have like a community, and a lot of us have different communities, right? We might have our families, you might have your friend group, maybe you've got your church community or, your gym community, like, right? There's all these different types of communities. I think we need to be connected to something. And one thing that I've really realized over the years, and I really strive for this, is that your attitude and like your outlook on life makes such a big difference. I work with different groups of people. Some of them have a lot of different types of challenges, but the people that I feel like kind of are able to work past them and move forward are the people that have a good like outlook on life. Everything is not going to be perfect all the time, but, how can you kind of be, focus a little bit on that gratitude? That's one of my favorite things to do for myself and with clients. And I do personally really do this every day. I think about when I get up in the morning, 5 things I'm grateful for. Sometimes they're simple things, I got up, I had a bad night and I got up in the morning and that's great this morning. All those kind of little things, I surround if you came into my office right now, I have little gratitude triggers everywhere that make me happy. But I think if we can have a positive attitude, it really does help us, with those challenging times. Because I think when people feel more fulfilled and, have a positive outlook, it just makes us all more beautiful.
The message is clear. It's blaring, Erin. It's blaring, that redefining success has to have a component of wellness in it.
Yeah.
It has to have self-care in it, and that's a big takeaway for me today.
Yeah. What's
the one idea or mindset shift that you hope every reader walks away with after reading your book, Wellness Reimagined?
That you are worth it. You are worth spending that time taking care of yourself, and it is not about being perfect. It's just about, progress, idea of progress, not perfection, giving yourself grace if you feel like, you got a little off track here or there. But, it's about all those like slow steps moving forward is really how we're going to get to living the life that we want to live.
What a powerful message from Erin Clifford, reminding us that success without wellness isn't really success at all. Now, let's shift gears to your financial well-being. All right, Rod Griffin, welcome to the Chundria Show. How are you today?
I am great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Now, you've spent more than 25 years, which is very impressive. You've helped consumers better understand credit and financial health. In your view, what's the biggest misconception that people have about credit today?
They think about credit as a barrier or a financial obstacle, I think. And that's kind of the wrong mindset. You need to think about credit as a financial tool. Debt's the financial problem. They're very closely related, obviously, but they're not the same thing. So if you use credit well, it can give you a financial advantage. If you use it poorly, you make bad decisions, take on too much debt, then it can be a problem. So what I always tell people is think about having a credit card. If it offers cash back or airline miles or discounts on purchases, you make all of your purchases every month using it, and then you pay that balance in full at the end of the month. You don't pay any interest, doesn't cost you any money, but you get potentially cash back. You've saved on your expenses during the month. You might have got airline miles that will help you take a trip, things that give you a financial advantage. And that's really what we want people to understand is if you're using credit well and understand what's in your credit history, it can work to your advantage. And that's what we want. What we really want is for people to be able to walk into a lender, tell them, I know what's in my credit report, I know what my credit scores are, I know where my finances are, I'm going to apply for a loan and you're going to say yes, and you're going to give me the rates I want. That's what we really want to empower people to do.
Yeah, it sounds like credit confidence, which I know a lot of people, could have a negative relationship when it comes to credit and money. It can feel arduous, can feel daunting. It could feel like something you've been trying to get out of, you've been trying to improve. And I know you all have products like Experian Boost, that's already helping millions of consumers improve credit scores. What kind of impact are you seeing, particularly in underserved communities?
Yeah, and it's enormous. And that's one of the reasons we created Boost. For those who haven't heard about it, it's a tool that lets you have positive information reported to your credit report that wasn't traditionally reported by the businesses. So You can have your cell phone payments, positive cell phone payments reported, your positive utility payments, things like natural gas, water, electricity. You can have your streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, so you can watch a movie on Friday night and improve your credit score at the same time. You may even be able to have your positive rent payments reported, which is, again, an enormous opportunity. We work with about 1,500 property management companies, some of the largest in the country, as well as some online rent reporting organizations that can help you have that positive rent, improve your history. Even your car insurance could be reported. So if you're making those car insurance payments on time, those organizations typically don't report to us themselves unless you mess up, unless you have a problem. If you're late, then it will come to your credit report in one way or another, and it could hurt you. And we thought that doesn't seem right. If you're doing the right things and being responsible, it should benefit you. So Experian Boost lets you tell us, I want to report whichever accounts you want, and it's permission based. And we go to the checking account or savings account or credit card you pay those bills with that you tell us you want to add to your report, and each month we'll capture that information as separate accounts. So you could have, a Netflix account, a water bill account, a cell phone account, and add those to your report. What we see is that on average, we see an increase of about 13 points when people enroll in Experian Boost. And for people with thin credit files or very little credit history, an average of closer to 19 points. So what it really does is help people who have less access to the credit reporting system gain that access and then get in the race to win. So positions them to be successful. And that's what's really important. And we do that by giving people the power to make those choices themselves. And something, another kind of thing that we think about is when people want to use credit or they want to work with Experian, we do far more than credit reporting. And what we would like people to think of us as is sort of aspirationally is to be a big financial friend, an organization they can go to that can help them not only manage their credit well, but have access to other tools and resources that can help educate them, that they have other financial resources like insurance, that marketplace that we can help save money, a credit card marketplace and help them save money, help protect them from fraud and recover. So I want to be with people on that journey. First step is getting into the system, and that's what Experian Boost is all about.
Yeah, I'm really glad that these types of resources are available, out there on the web. And there's so many companies that try to help people with their credit, that offer these services to get things removed, and oftentimes it seems a little predatory, So knowing that there are so many resources out there, how can people better protect themselves from identity theft and scams, this year and beyond, especially with so much of their personal data being online?
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And, I always tell people if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Nothing about Boost is it's free, so there's no cost to do it. If the first red flag when you're thinking about how to improve your credit history or you're worried about fraud is if someone tells you if you just pay me, I'll have that negative information removed, even though it's accurate, probably should go somewhere else because they've just violated federal law. Now the law says they can't promise to remove accurate information, even if it's negative. If there's a fee associated with it up front, you probably, they're questionable put it that way. But there are lots and lots of credit monitoring services. So again, Experian has a free monitoring service, an app on your phone, and we will monitor your credit history so that if anything pops up that could indicate fraud, we'll send you a notice right away. We monitor the dark web, which is, I always tell people, if you know how to get there, it might not be a good thing because that's where all of the illicit things happen. People that steal identities, that's where they sell those identities. It's where they do all sorts of other sort of bad things. So we are able to monitor the dark web, and if we see your identity, we can alert you. Mine's popped up there just because I've been a victim of identity theft. And then we can help you recover. So if you find something that shows on your credit report that you're a fraud victim or that your identity's been compromised, and we'll alert you, we can then help you identify what that information is, where it came from, help you work with the source to get it removed from that credit history, and then help you protect it going forward.
That's really great. So if anyone's watching that may feel overwhelmed by their debt or credit challenges, what lasting word can you leave to make someone feel better about that, and that there are steps that they can take to regain control and feel more confident in their financial future?
Well, I think the first thing is know you're not alone. I always tell people I'm very open with my history. I did the pay one credit card with another until I had to borrow money from my grandma. At one point, you never want to borrow from your grandma. My grandma would have been the best collector in the world. She could do grandma guilt like no one I've ever met. But you're not alone, and you can recover, and you can regain control of your finances. That's the first thing. It will take time. You need to own that information, so take control of it. Get your credit report. That will tell you what's in that history and where the debts are, so that you can start to take control of it. You can get a free report at annualcreditreport.com once a week if you want to get one there. 156 a year are free. You can get free reports once a month along with credit scores through Experian monitoring services, so we can give you more information about what you need to work on. And then we have education tools and resources that can help you start to recover. Experian Boost is an example of that. It can help you start putting that positive information in the report. And then I always tell people, if you're not sure, it can be very complicated. Ask for help. Don't be afraid. You shouldn't feel shame or embarrassment, because, as I said, we've all been there. We've all had our struggles. And so there's an organization called the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, for example, nfcc.org, that have counselors who are trained who can help with your overall financial health around the country. Use Experian's resources. And be sure that if you're hearing something that sounds too good to be true, probably is, go to a trusted source, someone that has some oversight like Experian. We're very heavily regulated, so we have an obligation to share accurate information with you. So we hope you'll think of us as a trusted source, that BFF, big financial friend, as you go through your financial journey.
I love that. Thank you, Rod. Now I have a few lightning round questions for you before we wrap up today. And the first one is, what's one financial habit you personally swear by?
It sounds crazy, but budget, and maybe not crazy. It's the old thing. It's budgeting. You need to know where your money is and where it's coming from, where it's going to.
Provide one financial tip on a giant billboard for the world to see. What would it say?
You should own your money. Don't let it own you. People too often feel like they're, serving their money because they get into debt. They're afraid to look at that credit history. They're afraid to know what's there. And I talk to people all the time, and I talk to groups and ask who's checked their credit report, and they want to do, the head goes down. They shake their head no. Like, why? Because I don't want to know what's there. Own that credit history. And when you own your money, when you are in control of your money and it's not in control of you, your life becomes so much better. It doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money. It just means that when you know where it's coming from, where it's going to, when you have that control, it's going to make your life so much better. Your financial health will be better. Your stress will be lower, and you'll be able to do things in the future that will make you more successful. I could go on and on, but you control your money. Don't let it control you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rod Griffin, for being a guest on the Chundria Show today. You've given lots. I hope Rod's insights empower you to take your next step with confidence, whether it's pulling your credit report, setting a wellness goal, or just showing yourself grace. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of the Chundria Brownlow Show. Until next time, take care of yourself, take charge of your life, and keep chasing purpose.
Come with me, I'm headed down the right path. I feel so brave, my head held high and I'm showing class. Dreams ignited, every day I truly give my best. I'm thriving excitedly to be the very best version of myself. I'm so bold.